Hey guys, my name is Jon Shabaglian. This is my dear bro TEMITOPE, and we're at the CCM Cafe. So great to be here. I'm a recording artist, a worship pastor in California. I started a work called Psalmist Mission, psalmistmission.org, raising up other psalmists, discipling them in a 9-month worship cohort. And my dear friend and our mutual friend, Sam Hart, one of my producer, I came out last year to Franklin working on another record, and I stepped into the studio with this beautifully brown brother, and we looked at each other, and I said, "So, bro, TEMITOPE, like, tell me what's your heart for me? Like, partnering is not flippant for me. Sharing kindredness because the kingdom mission is really strong for me. So being a psalmist on mission is just kind of what really pushes me." And so I said, "Man, what's inside of you?" And he looks at me and he said, "Man, my whole thing is about reconciliation." And I looked at him like, "Well, that can't be because that's my thing." So being a half Armenian and half German Mennonite, God has had me in between cultures and my own former enemies and the African American community on bridging before I learned my own version in reconciliation. And so running into him and then 3 hours later to see a Symphony of Peace being birthed was pretty special.
It was a special time. I think that we both, I remember talking like through the session, we were talking about like your cultural heritage and the hate that had existed between the Turkish people and the Armenian people. And then for me, my dad's Nigerian, my mom's British, which is something people always go, "Wait, your mom is British? Is she white?" I'm like, there's black people everywhere, or brown people, as you said.
That's right.
Because I technically am brown. But anyway, it was like the people are all over the place. And but in my dad's heritage on the Nigerian side, it was there's tribalism. So even when I talk to my dad about like what happened in the United States, because I was born in this country. My dad wasn't, my mom wasn't. So like when I talk about, hey, the ability that we have to live the lives that we have today is because of brave men and women,
Man, get it, bro.
Black, white, Christian, some non-Christian that have paved the way through like the civil rights movement.
100.
One of the biggest like stamps of like, hey, like justice for all people.
Seriously.
Civil rights movement, but people have been doing it forever. I mean, Frederick Douglass, you could go back and back and back. But I'm like, if it wasn't for this amazing heritage, that paved a river that now we get a drink from. And that's our reality. I mean, I'm married to a white girl, which in my dad's generation, my dad's 69. If my wife and I were my dad's age and we had gotten married, we would have been killed. Like, it was illegal. Miscegentation was illegal. So all that to say, like we talked about before, hatred is no respecter of skin color or gender or anything like that. Hatred just wants to, like you said, I love to burn everything to the ground. And so I think it was rad to talk about what you've experienced and me talk about, my dad's side of tribalism in Nigeria, the Yoruba and the Hausa and the Igbo, like nobody liking each other. That's people of the same color hating each other. And then what we've experienced in the United States, seeing, especially because of what happened in 2020, like just seeing the rise of hatred. We're like, we need a song like this. We need to provide balm for the hurting of the world.
And I think that's so fire. Like it is like the Neosporin. Like God has an antidote. What's awesome is it wasn't strategic by us.
No.
It was like the Father bumped us into a songwrite, but we had been prepared for such a time as this. It was already deep inside of us, and yet it was like ingredients came together for Neosporin.
Yeah.
And so, like you said earlier, reacting to culture, sometimes Christians react to, oh, here's a pain, we need to respond. But the Lord, when you're trying to walk in step with him, he's already addressing the antidote before the problem exists. And I feel like we stumbled into even a song like Symphony of Peace. Hopefully we were prepared enough to be stewarded with white gloves because it's sacred. Pain is sacred. My grandparents fled for their lives from the genocide. My great-grandfather was taken on a death march and shot just because he was Armenian. And yet Armenians are both 1,700 years of Christianity. We were the very first Christian nation. So I was in a quandary. Am I more Armenian or am I more Christian when I'm staring at my enemy? And Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers. They'll be called the children of God." And God will bring you into the scary yes. And if this song could be a healing, a balm, like you said, it would be such an honor, right?
Right. I love that you said, like, even like the power of your yes. I mean, I love Sam Hart, just to give him a shout out, his
Big
sensitivity, like to just knowing people, like not just like, oh, I'm going to write with this person, write with that person, we're going to accomplish this thing. For him, I think it's relational.
100%.
So I think he knew, like, when you were coming into town, he's like, oh, well, TEMITOPE, like, I've talked to him about these things, like, let me get him in the room. But we both had said yes. Wow. And Sam had said yes. And our yes, we didn't know what we were saying yes to. We didn't. You know what I mean? We were just 100. Like, we're just going to say yes. Like, okay, God, like, we got a lot of stuff going on in our lives, a lot of stuff going on in our weeks. You have a lot of other people you could write with. I have a lot of other people we could write with. But we're saying no to those to say yes to this, not knowing. And then look what the Lord did. You know what I mean? So I think there's so much power in our yes, and just going like, I don't know what you have planned, Lord. I can't see it yet. But if you're calling me to something, I'm going to say yes. You know what I mean?
That is so powerful. And I think for those who are listening, they're in other versions of either war or healing, right? And so we're like, well, there's that anthem, and maybe I'll stream it or listen to it. But your version is happening like right now. Do you go home and create conflict, or do you heal?
Right.
Do you split a church, or do you try to bring the bride together?
Right.
Do you stand between your wounded brothers and sisters and try to link arms, or do you add gasoline? And I pray that this song can be an anthem to strengthen us in, like you said, the scary yes. Because you're right, our bro Sam Hart, God used him. He actually told me, he said, John, I know you don't just partner with nobody. I actually prayed and I said, Lord, who do you want to connect him when he's here? And for his sensitivity to be a part of, it's like 2 + 2 = like 12.
Right.
Because God's writing a symphony.
I love that, bro. And I love what you said, like, about how we pray that the song can be used. I hope that this song could be a yes for the church. Of like you said, God's already called us to it. Jesus has already shown us the way.
Totally.
Are we going to say yes or no? Especially with social media and everything.
Right.
There's, like you said, every single day there's this decision we're being handed. Hey, are you going to be a pacemaker? Yes or no?
Totally.
Because they posted that photo of that person. They posted that video of that person.
Roast them.
Yeah.
Or you're going to stand before in darkness and say, no, this is not what the people of God do.
Right.
Here's vulnerable. We'll stand in between it.
Right.
I remember when the Lord sent us, I think it was must have been in 2021, 3 of our psalmists in our worship cohort were Ukrainian. We walked with them, cried with them, taught them music, poured into them. And then a few months later, the elders of their Ukrainian church laid hands on one of them and he became their worship pastor. And then a couple months later, Putin invaded Ukraine.
Oh.
And it was like,
oh, wow.
And our whole community was like, and I got a call from a Korean pastor, said, John, we got to do a prayer and worship vigil for the Ukrainians. They're getting crushed. Can you assemble some worship leaders? And it's like, well, we just trained the psalmists. Absolutely. And I remember we were standing together and one of the psalmist grads, his name is Vlad, and their family was literally in Kyiv, like, and in the middle of while the devastation was happening. And we did a worship time praying, God, protect the Ukrainians. And he looked at me after he said, John, I've never been a part of anything like this. He knew all about Ukrainians having Ukrainians' backs, but he didn't know about non-Ukrainians. What are Armenians or Hispanics or African Americans having our back when we're vulnerable? But that's what peacemakers do. And we didn't even try to be the hero, but God was writing a balm, a Neosporin story, a symphony of peace,
Bro, crazy.
Not to mention, you and I, 2 different tribes, 2 different pains. I've even led several music mission trips to London, and the only Brits I kicked it with were the black ones, by the way. and we would do missional pub tours.
Amazing.
And workshops. No, I'm not kidding. But then even on this song, that the psalmist we've mentored could actually be the choir to sing the anthem together. That literally the song has discipleship and mentorship in the burrito as we are singing about healing to the nations.
I think it's also kind of cool, like, just real quickly to note that, like, we have been the oppressed and we are singing it almost like to the oppressor in a way. We are the minority and the marginalized, but we're singing it to the majority. and like being like, hey, I know that it just feels like Jesus to me. Like, I'm not saying we're trying to exemplify the heart of Jesus. Obviously, he gave us this song because you look at it from like all these different angles and you're like, oh, I never saw that before. I never saw it. Like, I don't think we could take credit for it.
There's
it's
no
just
way.
like, oh, wow, like we are singing to the one that inflicted, and we're going, hey, like, I know you did this to me, but I'm singing peace to you.
But it's
crazy.
That is remarkable, bro. The Prince of Peace is looking at the people like crushing him on the cross and saying, Father, it hurts, but like forgive them.
Yeah.
To think that we could be anywhere near his example is mind-boggling. And where you're at as a listener, we just want to, like to TEMITOPE's point, like we didn't strategize this, but God, your obedience right now, your scary yes, could literally be positioning yourself to be a part of a healing story too.
Yeah.
So what kind of symphonies of peace might God may be writing out of the Symphony of Peace anthem? To me, that's like the darkness is getting worried now.
Yeah, bro. Make the darkness worried. And like this, you don't have to post the song to do it. We just pray that the song can spark something in your life to go, how am I? What am I joining the choir of gathering?
Yes.
Or am I singing a solo of discord? Like, am I being a peacemaker, or am I just furthering the hate and division? We just hope the song helps prompt that in your mind, but we don't need credit. Like, just go be who God's already created you to be.
Man, what a joy to be sitting here doing this with you, brother. And we just, Symphony of Peace just dropped a few weeks ago. It's on every streaming platform. And we hope that it can be an anthem and a strength to you. Go check it out, share it. But even more, we pray that your life would also be a symphony of peace. When you see pain and heartache, if you know God, stand between that pain and the vulnerable and say, God, anoint me to be a symphony of your peace.